Thank you for staying with us. The micro, small, and medium enterprises space is a significant source of employment, making a substantial contribution to Nigeria's economy, not only Nigeria, but the global space. However, the sector faces several challenges, including limited access to finance, high interest rates, rising inflation, which affects the operations and sustainability of this inflation in particular, is pushing millions of small businesses to the brink, with many unable to scale their operations despite government's effort to develop the subsector. Let's continue this discussion. I introduced him earlier. Dr. Femi Oladele is a business enthusiast with Meristem Securities Limited. Thank you so much. It's been a while. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, many times we always stay with the problems of MSMEs. But today I want to start with something I read online. Someone says, providing affordable and accessible digital financial solutions and, of course, services to MSMEs can drive growth. Do you agree to that?
Yes, I would say I agree. But before I agree or disagree, I think I would like to say that MSME operators should not go for my head. The last time I came here,
yes,
I promised that by this time of the year, this would have been better.
Yes.
But
yes,
we haven't seen what we expected as growth. So I would agree that digital services would drive growth. However, there are still underlying challenges in Nigeria. So digital awareness is still a problem. While we understand that many people have access to cell phones,
yeah,
we know that those services are not free. And some, especially nano businesses, are unable to afford those services right now.
But do you think MSMEs operating in Nigeria are ready to embrace the digital future?
Yes, definitely. And I think that many of them are already embracing that. I was chatting with a young man who owns a business in Lagos here. He has, according to him, he has 4 bikes that he uses for delivery. And he has changed his model, embracing technology more to drive his processes because he could not keep up with the cost anymore. So I believe that the readiness to adopt digital tools, digital services, that is optimal, but there are underlying challenges.
I also know that small businesses, many of them plan ahead, like at the start of the year. Oh, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that, I expect this to come in and that. But this year, we've seen subsidy removal, we've seen hiking the price of diesel, we can go on and on. Inflation is also on the other side. So how are small businesses grappling, coping with this situation?
Seriously, I should doff my cap to those who are still surviving because it has been overwhelming for many. And I was at a program where some people were already saying that they are closing shop because of the challenges. They are just overwhelming challenges. However, we have to note that for those who are able to innovate, some are trying to do their best. But the aspect of planning that you mentioned is an aspect that I am very interested in. Many times we talk about the planning with respect to keeping it in our heads. I think SME holders, managers and drivers should begin to see how they can use accounting, not bookkeeping now, accounting methodologies to keep and drive these processes. So I ask a question. You own a mechanic workshop. How many of your customers do you know? Do you know how many times they come to do, for example, vehicle servicing so that you can catch up with them and follow up with them? You own an hairdressing salon, for example. Do you keep up? Can you account for, in this month, I had 7 people come in, I had 10 people come in, this is the kind of style they did and all of that. So I believe that when we begin to look at those aspects, then we have data that we can use. And that's why I like what Faith Foundation is doing. They are curating lots of data that are valuable for SME managers. But the truth is that even if you had made your plans, with what has happened in this year alone, most of those plans will not hold. So it now comes to the fact that you bring in your innovativeness. And I don't discount the third finger.
But many will say government has a role. Why I don't want to stay so much on government, because government has a lot to grapple with at this time. Government has to attract investment. Government has to make the environment business friendly. Government, like we always say. But the likes of Bank of Industry, the likes of Bank of Agriculture, Development Bank of Nigeria, Nexim, all of these banks should be supporting MSMEs. We hear of large funds sometimes being available, but accessing these funds become a problem. Can you take it away? Take it away from there.
We need a fall guy, and so government is the fall guy. We relinquished our rights, and so managing other people's rights is not easy. So they would obviously always take the fall for it. But the truth is that yes, the Bank of Industry and all of those development banks are available, and many of them offer fund for single digits. But the truth is that some of the conditions and the time it takes to process the bureaucracy, it's a bit long. I know that many things are happening in that space to limit that time, and that's why loan sharks are surviving, because in 10 minutes, I can get a loan right now. I can get a loan right now. So, but for most of those orders, they begin to require some kind of documentation and some form of security that will give them comfort that you would repay. And so we cannot discount the fact that they are doing their best, but many people also, and significantly, don't even know how to access. If you ask some business owners, they don't even know what the BOI is. So they don't even know how to access them.
True.
So that there is a knowledge gap, and many key players and stakeholders are already working to deal with that. I also know of new and emerging digital service banks that are trying to bridge that gap. But what I would say, aside government and the development banks that you mentioned, is that just like Robert said, I think we need to begin to look at how to rethink our models. We have people who might have access to finance and may not necessarily need the huge returns. Those people may begin to play maybe some form of impact financing. So if, for example, you love or you have interest in electricity, clean energy, when you have SMEs that working in that space, you begin to open up access to them to get finance at very significantly cheap rates. Because if we continue to say, like we mentioned, I go to the bank and I'm having access to fund at 26%, right now, 27%, even some you hear up close to 28%.
How will one make profits with this kind of interest rate?
So, and most of these local productions that we do still rely significantly on raw materials from abroad, machinery from abroad. So when you now add that to the FX fluctuations, it becomes a big problem. And many people have just said, see, let's close shop, let's move out, let's try something else.
It's worrisome. There's also a federal government licensing some business development service providers. I'm sure you've heard about that. I spoke to Mr. Olagunjutu about this, and he talked about the essence of having BDSPs, as they're called in code. But what do you think, or what impact has that had across the sector space?
I have not been able to see any data to be able to give a fair opinion about their impact. But I believe that in the minds of policymakers, when policies are made, they are made with good intentions. The aftermath of reality now may differ. And so since I don't have access to data, I won't want to pontificate in that area for now. Okay.
The Nigerian Startup Act was also to help improve. Yes, I see you nodding already. So that was a step in the right direction, right?
Yes, it is a step in the right direction.
Are we taking advantage of it?
To some extent. The reason why I was nodding is because, in my opinion, I feel that the act is limited.
Okay.
It favors tech startups more. So I feel that many times when we talk about startup and we look at financial services, I think I saw something in the news one time. There are 6 unicorns in Nigeria, and I think all 6 of them are in the financial service sector. We have other sectors, real sectors, that can also drive growth, and I believe that we should be focusing in that area too. So that's why I would not say that we have taken, but it's a relatively new bill, new act, sorry. So I would not say that we have 100% taken advantage of it. But with what is happening, I've been following the the Minister for Digital Economy
Yes.
and Communications and Digital Economy. And with what they are doing, it appears that at the end of that plan, we would be able to have said, oh, we have maximized this act, and whatever things that we have learned, lessons that we have picked up here and there, we'll be able to use those lessons to further develop the act and make it more productive for people.
I think the creative sector is also something that is getting so interesting in the MSME space, film, fashion, and music, and all of that. How are guys taking advantage of this?
Technology is driving that space, really. Before, you need lots of gears and gadgets. Now, with a good phone and a good stand, you can even shoot a short movie. So, because of that, the availability of technology and the fact that you don't need to necessarily have a filming house to be able to project to your audience.
Yes.
It is closing that gap between the big and the small guys. And I believe that the big guys too should begin to see how they can support the small guys. Or else, with time, it will just be like what we're experiencing with banks. While we understand that these big banks would not go away, they are kind of losing traction when it comes to services. With the numbers you see some of these new banks posting, you'll be wondering, are these aliens? Where are these numbers coming from? So I believe that because technology is driving that creative space, the big players should begin to look at how they can support the small players. But basically, I know that the proliferation of social media has also helped, and many people, according to sources that we have read and results from research, they are taking advantage of that space, and things are going good for them.
Very, very interesting wrap up there. But before we go, I'm looking at supports that we've seen from government. I remember the early days of this government. We had some monies for manufacturers, monies for small businesses and nanos and all of that. How well can all of this be implemented? Yes, I know there are always some issues around this money is getting to the right people, just like we talked about palliatives getting. But the government has shown sincerity in saying, we want to do this. So how can it be properly channeled so that it gets to those that really need this funding?
Like I mentioned during the last time, I think that we can do this by reaching out to organized associations. We have NASME, we have ASBON, we have so many of them in those space. And the truth is that if you are an SME manager or you own a small business, you should look for these associations and become a member. Many of them, they don't require fees. Just come and show interest and you join. Because through those associations, it's easier to reach out to small businesses. It's easier. If we say today, I told someone when someone complained and said, government is not sharing the money. I said, if I want to pick 6 students, among more than 1 million students in Nigeria, and I tell you, pick me 6 students, how would you do that? Will you choose UI or OAU or private universities? So it's difficult for scarce resources to be shared in a space that there is no clarity. Because we still have data challenges, it is hard for us to navigate that space. But I think the fairest and the closest way to get in is to use registered and recognized organizations. NASME, ASBON. With those ones, you know that when the money gets there and they don't do the right thing, you can hold their leaders responsible.
Yeah. So what is your projection for small businesses? It's supposed to be the season now. It should be all manufacturing, all production ahead of Christmas and New Year celebrations. But I don't know what is happening. Tell us. You talk to your guys in the field.
I don't want to make another projection. I did not like the first step, but seriously, this is a difficult question to answer. I wish that there was a glimmer of hope for small business owners and managers. But the truth is that, like I mentioned in the beginning, innovativeness comes to play right now. I'm going to mention one. I spoke with some guys, and they said that they have I won't call the name of the particular oil, but they have started using one type of household oil to power their machines.
Wow.
They have moved from synthetic to the general engine oil that you buy on the street. They have moved to one particular type of household oil just to cut costs. Some months ago, they said to fill their tank, they used 2,100 naira. Now they're using 8,500 naira. So to cover that cost is a significant thing. And projecting without clarity on government's part is also difficult. Many times it's difficult to say this is how it's going to turn out because we don't necessarily know what the government is saying. And I think Robert also mentioned that it's difficult to say this is the direction. And to add to that discourse about MPR, I remember very well, although I was just growing into the economic literature then, that we moved from MRR in 2006, late 2006 to MPR. And since then, from 10% today, 18.75%. Those are significant challenges. We need government to come out and clearly say it in words that we can understand that can help us to make those projections. It's difficult to make any projection right now.
Thank you so much. Playing really safe. Dr. Femi Oladele is I was thank you for your time. Business enthusiast, Meristem Securities Limited. Thank you so much. We'll have you back to gauge all of this and see where we are with regards to MSMEs. I appreciate your time on the program.
Thank you so much.